Hi, welcome to the Barmy Army Isolation Podcast number 15. This evening I'm joined by Fiona and Ian. How are you both doing? Fiona, how's it going at the moment?
Yeah, good. Keeping busy with work, that kind of thing.
Missing football still? Missing going to football at least? I know we've got it on TV, but yeah. And I know you're particularly looking forward to at least a little nugget of something when United release the new kit, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly.
Ian, how are you doing?
Yeah, not bad. I'm actually on some time off from work at the moment, so I've got another 2 weeks before I go back to work. So
good for you.
Yeah, it's a bit of R&R now, just a bit of downtime.
Good stuff. Also, no football. Watching it? Have you been watching it?
No, I've been watching it. I've been watching the games without crowd noise where they're issuing it, where it's loud, because I don't like the fake crowd noise. So I've been watching.
This was the question I was going to ask you both: crowd noise or no crowd noise? You're saying no crowd noise.
No crowd noise for me. So yeah, I've been watching the games without any crowd noise.
Fiona?
So I watched the game on Amazon without crowd noise because it was just too loud in comparison to the commentary. But normally I just have it on just because.
Okay. We found the rule of if we're at home, we'll have the crowd noise. If it would have been an away game, no crowd noise. So, but yeah, my niece actually refused to watch a game yesterday because she didn't like the crowd noise. So yeah, I think it's going to divide opinion. Good evening, John. Good evening, Mark. John says, in answer to that question, no crowd noise. I think we could all agree that whether we'd like to watch it or not, with or without, it's better with people in the ground.
Yeah.
Not that we know when that's going to be. Hopefully it's at some point soon. Renewals, since we've last done a podcast, renewals came out for women's season tickets. Have we all renewed?
Yes.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Obviously, we got them at a rather reduced price because of the games that we've not had last season. I have to keep reminding myself this last season now. But yeah, hopefully we get to use those season tickets and actually get to a few games and see one another physically, not just through a screen. So, as we were just saying before we started recording, the plan this evening was we were going to discuss maybe the confirmation of the departures. We were maybe going to talk about an arrival or two or three, who knows? And none of that's happened because nothing's changed. So in the social on Sunday, I was talking to Fiona and Ian actually. And one of the things we were talking about was contract extensions and the length of contract extensions and who's had a contract extension. Good evening, Norway. Norway joining us this evening. Nice to see you with us. So this was triggered from the conversation about we've had players that have been given a single year extension. Only Ella Toon to date that we know of, because I'm fully expecting that there will be, hopefully, other extensions. But we only know of Tooney, as far as I'm aware, in this last batch that's had a more than 1 year extension. And United, being the king of the options, have even started writing them into the women's contracts as well. Are you surprised that they've only given a single year to some players? Fiona?
So I am, but I'm not really. So if you look at the women's game, not many players move on a transfer. They move on when they're released from a contract. So if we're looking at progressing as a team in the future, we're going to have to bring players in, and we won't want to have too many players on the books. And there's no guarantee anybody would buy them. So if you give them a short contract, you'll know they'll be released. And yeah, we've got an option there to give them another year if we want. But then also, there's quite a lot of players on 1 year contracts. So we're going to have the same issue again next summer. Yeah. I imagine there'll be a few more players on 2 year contracts. Now, if you look at Amy Turner, she's had injuries in the past. She can't play maybe 3 games a week, that kind of thing. there's a potential that maybe she can't play as long. I don't know. We don't know all the medical stuff, so maybe that's why we're thinking 1 year. I'm not sure, but yeah.
Ian, just before I come to you, Nat's jumped in. These are the extensions that were announced midway through the season, I think. They were multi-year deals, so yes, but it seems as if Nat, right, Leah, LJ, Rambo, they got multi-year deals. But the ones other than Tooney, this during the off season, have only been a single year, with the exception of Tooney. Mark said he would have given Siggy more than 1 year. Ian, thoughts on single year extensions? Surprised? Not surprised?
Not surprised in where the women's game is at the moment.
Yeah.
You know, someone like a Lauren James, who we all agree is a special talent, that is Casey keeping hold of her. But also, if she was to leave, there will be a value in it because you're going to be buying out a contract rather than someone coming at the end of the contract. Which, you know, well, let's be honest, most of the transfers in the women's game are done when you're out of contract, so there's no fees involved. Whereas, you know, if, just as throwing out an example, you know, a Real Madrid came in next summer for an LJ, she's still got 2 years on her contract. So the fee they would have to pay to get her out of that contract will also be significantly, well, for the women's game will be high compared to, you know, she's only got 1 year left. Like, all right, we'll wait for her to be free next year. So, no, it doesn't surprise me. The one thing that did surprise me, mentioning Leah, she only got a 1 year extension earlier this year. She's only under contract until the end of the 21 season, plus, again,
the option.
But that's obviously that's the club option, not a player option. So it's a case of, I think, with the club putting those years in, it's the case of, if the right, you know, in a case of, I don't want to say this for Jess, but if a prolific striker was available next summer, we know there is a certain prolific striker out of contract next summer, came available. It's a case of, could you get them in? And it's thanks to your help, Jess, because unfortunately, it's something that Rich has said as well. It's now a case of slowly picking up someone of caliber each summer. You know, it's not going to be done this summer. It's not all going to be done next summer. It's going to be a building process. So you're going to be possibly trying to bring in one big name every summer transfer window until you get to maybe 2 or 3 years down the line, where you might still have a Mary Earps in goal. I think we'll still have a Millie Turner around. Hopefully a Jackie Gronin and a Leah Goldson and a Lauren James, but the rest of the team might be completely different to what we see today.
Yeah, that podcast, for anybody who hasn't seen it or doesn't know about it, Nat and I sat down with Rich Laverty. He's a journalist that covers lots of women's football, and he was talking about, one of the things we were talking about was, we were asking him was about our direction and our growth and what's reasonable, I suppose, for us. And he made the point that we are appropriate. That's kind of how it felt. We are realistic where we are, but we are not going to compete with the top three without strengthening and getting in some of those world stars. But you can't get the world stars if you haven't got Champions League. It's a bit of a catch-22. You need Champions League to get them, but if you haven't, So much as he was saying that the team will adapt and the team will evolve, and that will be a process. Thank you, Mark. I know you're not biased in the slightest. It was a really interesting chat, actually. And I know I said to Rich that I'd really love to sit down with him again and maybe we get some more questions, maybe once the season's started. But just that sense of, Casey's talks about a 5-year plan, and that will involve a lot of the team that, you know, as Nat calls them, the OG21, a lot of those girls moving on and us having a completely different look. So we are not going to be top of the tree after 3 years. And as Mark pointed out to me this afternoon, it's not even 2 seasons we've had. We've had a year and a half. So what's realistic for us at this point? We need to get somebody in. We need to start getting those players, the better quality, the world stars, as he was saying, but it's not going to happen overnight. I know that will really annoy a lot of the Twitter fans, but not just yet. It's happening, hopefully, just not right away. Can I ask a question to both of you? Because you've both got more knowledge about the women's game than I have. And when we were talking about this on Sunday, it took me back to one of my earliest jobs, where people would work on 3-month contracts. And the bonus for the company was that obviously you do your job, after 3 months, you're gone, we don't have to pay you. Works wonderfully for them. But for the staff, I was coming across people who couldn't settle. Personally, they always felt like they were, not so much professionally, but they were fighting and they were constantly battling, because they'd settle in and then they'd have to try and find where the next contract was coming. And you could almost see the panic in them. And I often wondered, does that transfer to their work? Because actually they're already chasing the next piece of work. And have they taken their eyes off the current piece of work? And whilst I appreciate 1-year contracts and 1-year extensions are the done deal, does there come a stage when actually for players, that's a negative because they can't settle in? And I know this year has been extremely unusual and we'll hopefully never get another situation like it. But for a player who, I'm thinking of Lizzie Arnott here, Lizzie may have had the second half of the season, she could have gone on a run and she could have really earned herself a new contract. But she was always fighting against time. So is there a point when actually that 1-year contract doesn't fire a player up to go and play their best every week? It actually keeps them scared, because what if I don't get that chance, and what if it doesn't come? Do you see what I'm saying here? That actually there could be for me, I'm thinking as a boss, am I getting the best out of somebody? Ian, stop me talking. Say something.
No, I see exactly where you're coming from, because, you know, as you said, it all depends on the individual and the character of the individual. You know, it could be a case of, I'm going to be determined that they can't not re-sign me for a year. Or you could go into the case of, I'm now concerned that I might not have a contract at the end of the season, and where am I going to go? Who's going to sign me over the summer? And then you suddenly start getting panicky. You're probably onto your phone, your agent saying, look, find me something. And then the worry over, you know, you might not hear back for a while. You know, it takes some time for feeders to go out and clubs to come back. You know, about interest, because, you know, clubs don't know themselves probably when the player starts worrying about these things. So, you know, it goes both ways. You'll either have a player who is determined to say, look, I'm coming in here, I'm going to play my socks off and, you know, show you that you need to give me a new contract, or you go into your shell, you know, and if you do, and when you do play, you don't play that well, because, as you said, your head's just not in it, because you're more worried about the future. So no, I completely agree that it can act as, you know, 1 year can act as a good thing in the right, if you have the right mentality. If you've got a different mentality, then it's a bad thing.
And obviously injuries could come into that. We're talking about a year with a virus, but it's more common to have an injury than it is to have a virus that takes the world out, seemingly. So
one ACL injury in women's game, and you know, get an ACL in November, that's your season done.
Cheerio, that's you done. Fiona, thoughts on that? Sorry, just before you come in, good evening, Jake. I'm going to have a chat with you in a minute, hopefully via the messages.
Yeah, so 1-year contract, I suppose it could motivate you as a player to think, okay, I need to show what I've got, and it also could cause you to worry about it. Like, and it's not just where am I going to be playing next season. It could also be where am I going to live next season. All these new people I'm going to meet. And I suppose you could also say, well, if I'm staying at the club, but lots of my players around me have 1-year contracts and they're all leaving, I'm going to be playing with a completely different team. If you look at Birmingham, for example, what's happened to them in a season or two? They were going from, I think, weren't they in one of the cup finals or doing quite well?
Yeah, they won the FA
They
Cup, didn't
finished
they?
fourth, didn't they? 2 seasons ago, didn't they finish fourth? Weren't they the best of the rest? And then absolutely decimated, almost like Liverpool, absolutely picked apart, and they've not managed to stem the flow.
Yeah. So as a player, you might be worried about, well, I might be at very well, like a club doing well, but in a season or two, what's it going to look like for me? And if I play well, but the rest of the team isn't performing, that obviously can impact where you're going as a club. But then you've got all of these other things that are on your mind. If you look at like Leah Galton, she represents herself as well. She doesn't have an agent, or she didn't have an agent previously. So if you're also doing this as well as playing your football,
Yeah, good point.
you've got a lot going on. So yeah, the done thing is normally like a 2-year contract. But yeah, you see some 1 years, and you see there's very few that are 3 years. So yeah, I imagine it would play on your mind quite a lot. And yeah, moving around the country is never going to be easy. So that's probably why you see a lot of people going Everton to Liverpool or vice versa. Between the London clubs, that kind of thing. So yeah.
And maybe between Manchester clubs. That's a whole nother conversation for another time, though. So looking at it from the player's point of view, obviously good and bad. It could be a way of proving what their character's like. Jake's just confirmed what I suspected. They were fourth, basically where we are now. Hopefully that's where the similarities end. He's already making a prediction for next season.
I agree.
So on the 1st of July at around 17 minutes past 7, Jake, we'll hold you to that one. As things stand, I don't even think they can put out an 11, never mind a squad. So yeah, I think they'll be everybody's tip to go down. Thinking from the club perspective, obviously the money's not there to have players that just sit on the bench for 2-3 seasons and take their wages. So they're not going to get the lengthy contracts. But the clubs will always be running the risk, potentially, of losing their star players. Now, yes, you've got some teams that seem to keep players and they'll keep them happy. And we hope, certainly with our best players, we can do that. But a year, there's nothing to stop a player running it down. And cheerio, Charlie, I'm off, sort of thing. So I think in terms of the contracts, for me, this is a sign of the lack of money in the game. Because not everybody is looking for their dev squad. Now, just go back to Birmingham. Okay, for anybody that's in the situation, the Birmingham away game that was actually rescheduled, so we were on, I think, the third version of it that never went ahead. We as a group of fans have been told we can't have our money back, but we can invest it in their development squad. I think we said no. Didn't really think about it either. So yeah, Birmingham are struggling financially, and certainly this situation is not going to help. So contract-wise, the money is the issue. Yeah? Would you say that, Fiona?
Yeah, so if we gave a player a 4 or 5 year contract like the men tend to get, that player maybe has potential and then doesn't reach it, or slowly declines over time. In the women's game, unless other clubs are going to start offering 4 or 5 year contracts, nobody's going to want to buy them. Even if they're performing well, nobody will want to buy them because they'll just think, well, I could go and get this other person who's very similar, but on a free. So you're basically losing money paying for their wages on the bench, potentially. And also, if you look at how things are quickly changed, if you go from being fighting for relegation and then end up performing well, maybe get up to fourth or fifth, you might want to get rid of the players that were not playing very well and have led you to relegation battle, but you can't get rid of them because nobody will want to pay. So I think Yeah, unless our club start doing longer contracts, no club is going to really start doing longer contracts unless it's your star player. Places like Birmingham, Bristol, they're going to struggle financially. But if we, for example, had signed Ellen White or Beth England, it would not surprise me if Manchester United went, they're having a 4 or 5 year contract. I don't care what the rest of the clubs are doing,
Yeah.
but maybe not for everybody. Like we gave Leah a longer contract. Well, not Leah, we gave some of the other players like LJ longer
The
contracts.
LJ's the
We believe that there are a couple of the players who came in at the beginning of last season. They may be on 3-year deals. But again, there's so little information. Ian, do you expect that once there's money in the game, more money, I should say, because there is some money, with more money, would you expect longer term contracts? Or do you just think this is how the women's game is going to be?
I think when the money comes in, the contracts will start to meet it because agents obviously are involved in quite a few. And, some of our players are with agents who also manage men in the men's game. So, because I'm going to say when the Premier League take over the WSL and the Championship off the FA, the power of the Premier League, the sponsors the Premier League can attract, the money they can attract into the game, be it TV revenue, sponsorships, you name it. It's the Premier League. It's the biggest brand in football. The women's game will get it won't, it's not going to be, let's not kill ourselves. It's not going to be men's money, but in the grand scheme of things for the women, the things like if we would have a pandemic again in the future, and God help us, nobody wants that. We would be able to pay for testing for the players. The season could have resumed at the beginning of July, at the beginning of June, like the men's did. So I think when the money comes in, you'll probably see 2-3 year contracts for the players that a club wants to tie down. The money will be there, but I would say that for initially that would be for your marquee names. So in our team, the ones I would want to see tie down in our squad to those types of deals would be LJ.
I'm coming back to that in a minute. Go on, you start me off, Ian, because
so
I'm
LJ.
Yep.
Millie. Yes, got to get Millie. She's a rock. She really is. This might come as a surprise, but I want Hayley Ladd tied down. The way she played last season. We all said during the first year of the championship, we need a holding midfielder, someone to break up the play. Hayley came in and did a fantastic job. So Hayley, if she's on a 3-year deal, brilliant. Leah, I would want tied down as well. They're the ones that spring to mind, the ones I would want to, have nailed down, because I think Leah is the best left winger in the country, and probably, this is going to be bold, probably in Europe. For me,
it's the night for ridiculous claims, isn't it? That we're going to hold.
Why
not?
From what I saw of Leah, I saw her game at Sky Blue. Yeah.
I'll always agree with you on that, Ellen.
Yeah. From what I saw of her at Sky Blue, because I did, when she signed for us, I did.
Yeah, you're getting some love here, Ian.
I went and looked at her, and I thought there's some talent there. Obviously, she fell out of love with the game when she moved to Bayern. But she's come to us. She said she's fallen back in love with the game. I think Casey's the ideal person to mentor her. She refused an England call-up. That takes some guts. For you to turn down your country.
Jake's challenge.
No, that's what I said. I did say best in Europe. So
he's saying that's coming from him. He wants to claim on that. Sorry, Jake, you're slow.
Yeah. So I just think I do think in the next 2 years Leah will play for England.
Yes.
No question about it. It just needs to get she needs to just get herself ready and mentally ready for it. And I think Casey's the right person to do that for her. So those are the girls I would tie down to long-term contracts right now if I could.
Absolutely agree, because one of my next questions is very simple, and I would love people's comments. I know we've got a few coming up, but also just as it take a slight detour, we're going to have a fair few more weeks of these podcasts before there's any football. We don't know what's going to happen, if anything. If there is anything that people would like us to discuss on future weeks, please do let us know, so that I don't have to torture Ian and Fiona with topics like this. But Ian, you've mentioned it. Everybody out who's watching, please give me some answers to this. Who in the current squad needs a long-term deal? And the first answer is Millie Turner. Carry on. Fiona, who would you give a long-term deal to? Anybody we've not mentioned? I know Leah's getting a lot of love. So, sorry, very quickly. Jake loves a free. I think we all love a free when we get them. We just don't want to lose anybody.
Yeah, I think free transfers aren't going anywhere.
Yeah, but otherwise we're getting lots of love for Leah. Mark wants Katie to get an extension. Ellen obviously agrees. John would be happy that Kirsty Hansen's had another deal. Fiona, who would you say needs an extension?
Yeah, so obvious ones are Millie, Leah, Hayley. I'd agree Kirsty Hansen, because she's quite a young player as well. So I think there's quite a few players in our squad that have got potential. And so we don't want to have them for a year and then they go somewhere else.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are definitely like the ones. Yeah, LJ is a perfect example of that. She's got a lot of potential. We don't want to train her and play her for 2 or 3 years, and then she goes off to bigger and better things at a different club. They need to stay at United. Yeah, Mary's a good shout. On the other ones, I think they need to prove themselves at WSL level to show that they deserve to be at the club for more than 2 years. If there's a very optimistic aim, in 2 or 3 years, we want to be challenging not just for top 3, but progressing in the Champions League. And there's a few players in the squad that maybe they could do it, but they're like, if you look at players like Ella Toon, she's young, there's potential there, but she now actually needs to prove it. So I think maybe the 2-year contract will help them reach that target.
A couple of other suggestions for a long-term deal.
Well, she just signed a new 2-year deal, didn't she? She's signed with us now till
She
2022.
Yeah.
So Casey's on a contract to the 30th of June 2022. So we've still got another 2 years.
Hopefully. John will be happy. Obviously, Amy Turner's signed an extension. And I think just rewards for her, because at the beginning of the season, I wasn't sure where she was going to feature, if at all. And for me, she made right back her own, and she's not a right back. Now, does that ask the question of, do we need quality? Do we need fullbacks? But all credit to Amy, because she could very easily have said, right, I'm done here. I need to look elsewhere, but she's knuckled down and she's done it. And I think as a fan, whenever you see a player fight, either on the pitch or off the pitch, they fight for their place and they put in the effort, that will always make you warm to them, and that will always make you want to see them that little bit more. So thinking about, actually, was there anybody, and I've just mentioned Amy Turner there, was there anybody that surprised you this season in terms of their level? I say this season, and it really annoys me because we had half a season. It feels like half a season. That's all the international breaks as well. Fiona, anybody that you were impressed with in terms of them stepping up a level?
So
that we mentioned.
So there's a few where they've progressed throughout the season. So if you look at Kirsty Smith,
Yeah.
she still has her shaky moments, and would I want her being our left back against a Chelsea, for example? No, but she has definitely stepped up. She is always trying. Things don't always work, but she's at least trying. Also, Jess, because now she's played on the right, isn't her position. I d- and before we went into WSL, I did think, how is she going to cope? Because I know she's done well in the WSL too before. How would she cope in the WSL? But she's a proper United player. She will run for the team, and she's just proved that. And she's willing to learn a new role. So yeah, I think those two have stood out for me as well.
And that's that fight, that battle we talk about with Siggy, that you just know she'd run through a brick wall for United. She is a United fan, so that will always endear her more to us. But you can see what it means to her. That goal she celebrated against the second goal against City, she really, really enjoyed that. And anybody, I think, for me, I've always loved a player who isn't afraid of a battle and will get stuck in. And that gets me rattled and riled and, yeah, come on, we can really get behind that. So I think when you see somebody doing that, and Jess brings that, and I think we all know she's not perhaps the top class striker we want, but what she perhaps lacks in other areas of the game, she makes up for with effort. And I think if you've got 100% heart, then we as the fans will always, always get behind a player. Ian, before I come on to you, I have mentioned the City goal. So Mark, very simply, he enjoyed that too. That goal as well. Nat, yeah, should have sticking it to Vicky too. Okay. And Fiona, yeah, Ellen agrees with you.
I would just say as well on Kirsty Smith, she has demonstrated good game management when we've not always had that from everyone. And so she can definitely pass that skill on to some of us.
I have a really, really fond memory of being stood at Reading. It's about the only positive memory from that afternoon. And Kirsty Smith a couple of times was taking a throw in near where I was stood. I don't know where you were in terms of near the ball. And a couple of times you could see she was taking her time, and I just kept shouting, yeah, slow it down. And she was bouncing the ball. She was taking the opportunity. And she was almost looking at us as if to say, I know what I'm doing here. Against Everton, I think
I'm pretty sure she got booked there. I think she got booked against Reading as well for slowing it down.
It was worth it. That ref had no idea anyway. Against Everton, last game of the season, she headed the ball back. Someone threw it to her yet. And was it Tottenham where she basically shuffled herself back onto the pitch? Again,
she did that at home. Yeah,
those kinds of things will always make you love somebody. But yeah, her level did pick up. Ian, who impressed you, and you didn't necessarily expect them to have the season? I know we mentioned everybody, but on a personal level as well.
Kirsty Smith definitely did better than I expected. No question about it. Amy Turner did as well. She only gave away, I think, one stupid penalty all season rather than
maybe that's because, but Ian, that might be because we didn't play the whole season as well.
That's true. I was going to say the one against Brighton in the Conti Cup springs to mind. 25,000 years late to a challenge that she never had to make. But as you said earlier, she made the right back position her own. I didn't see that coming. I honestly didn't. When we brought Abby Mack in, I thought that's the end of Turner and Turner.
Yes.
And you know how well they played together last season. Because I thought as soon as that's happened, because we knew obviously that Amy had her injury problems. And do you know what? For someone who's had her injury problems, she's barely missed a game through injury. So yeah, if the players that have surprised me in the season, definitely, I was going to say it'd be the two fullbacks basically. Yeah, Amy T and Kirsty Smith. They were the two that surprised me in the season that we had, albeit shorter than it should.
And I've said this before. I feel really cheated. I really and truly feel cheated out of the rest of the season. Not just because it was football to watch, but I think we had some players. We had both Kirsty Hansen and Leah Galton coming back from injury, and just the chance to see them play, the chance for them both to be fit, to hopefully get back to the kind of form that they were both in earlier in the year. Just Mark's
Leah's performance against Everton, that was her second game back, I think it was, after injury.
I mean, she was, yeah.
She had the Everton right back on toast for the whole game.
And also, and Fiona will back me on this one, because I'm pretty sure I've already recited this on a podcast. When she went off, we were 3-0 up.
Yeah.
They scored their first, a minute, 2 minutes, Fiona?
1 minute afterwards.
So might not be a defensive, titan, but she gives you that outlet and just that presence. Mark's coming out with a new one for us. He thinks Martha needs an honourable mention as well. And Jake has his reasons for being upset that the season has come to a premature end.
Let me guess, Jane Ross. Yeah.
100% record as captain. Just remember that, Jake. If you imagine what could have happened.
Maybe we were about to enter the Jane Ross as captain era.
No. We were lucky to hold on in that game in the end, if we're honest. We
were lucky to hold on. Sorry, can I just also say, we've got a new watcher tonight, Murray Man. I've just noticed a couple of comments just saying that he's new to WSL. We're here every week at the moment because there's no football to go to. There's certainly no women's football to go to or watch. So we're here every week. So yeah, check us out and watch and give us some comments. So nice to see you join us. Jake, obviously, there you go. Give me the armband.
She's got to play for the armband.
Ian, cutting.
That 1-star signing for the summer is going for a striker.
Sorry.
But Jane is also an example of what we were talking about at the beginning. Let's be circular here, because long-term deal supposedly, but not.
I think she's on 2, wasn't she? 2 or 3, yeah.
I've heard 3, but again, and this is the other thing as well, the information isn't always out there.
I was going to say, it's the rumours from Nice, isn't it, really? We're hearing what's right from Nice.
I don't see that there was much wrong that was said in Nice, Ian. I think much of what we said and agreed was, Nat's confirming that one for us. 3 years, and she's happy.
I said it on Twitter today or yesterday that you just don't hear contract lengths on initial signings for some reason. On all the extensions, we know how long they've got, but on all the initial signings, not a clue.
But is this not also part of the same issue we talk about with money, whereby the journalists aren't? There's not as many journalists. There's not as much want for it as well. We're going global tonight, not just Norway. Murray Man's coming from Ireland. Okay, so there you go. You're going global tonight. If the money comes in, do we expect the media coverage to step up? Ian, would you expect that?
Yeah, I do.
Natural progression for the game.
Yeah, I do see it. I'm going to put a spotlight on the Daily Telegraph. They at the beginning of this season or over the summer said, "Look, women's sport deserves the same kind of coverage that we give men's sport."
Yeah.
So, they've got Katie Wyatt in there now as the lead football correspondent.
Okay.
I think it's every weekend there is a women's pullout as part of the sport pullout, if I remember correctly. No other national paper does that. So the Daily Telegraph are putting out women's stories daily, and if you look at all the other papers, you'll see Susie Rack in the Guardian, and Molly in the Times. But the problem is, though, for Molly, her stuff's behind a paywall.
Yes.
And
unless Nat puts it anywhere for us to publicly see it, I can't do that. So Nat.
So her stuff's behind the paywall all the time, so it's very hard to see it.
Yeah.
Susie Rack doesn't get that much column inches in the Guardian. So the only real newspaper outlet, if we go with newspapers, is the Telegraph. Yeah. And let's be honest, the Telegraph isn't really so everybody's reading. It's a broadsheet. It's typically read down here rather than up north. If we're
up here, where me and Fiona are, thank you. The beautiful north.
It is the beautiful north. I will not disagree with that when I live where I live. But the BBC are putting more effort into their women's sport coverage. Women's news stories are now on the front page of the BBC Sport website. When we beat City in the derby, that was front page.
Do you know what else was front page of the BBC webpage? Anyway, moving on. Did the BBC and obviously everything's gone wrong. Did the BBC not plan to do like a women's summer of sport? Have I made that up, or was that maybe last year? But they wanted to profile women, and
they did say they would try and target more women's sport rights. So obviously you look at, we should be in Wimbledon at the moment. If Craney's around, I don't know if he's around, but obviously Craney is obviously a big tennis fan. In the moment, we should be in the middle of Wimbledon. There's always a women's game on being showcased. And that.
But you know what's interesting, Ian? I'm sorry, Fiona. I'll come back to you in a minute. I've got a real issue on this, okay? And traditionally, this was where I said we shouldn't be aiming, because tennis was always let's have equal prize money, okay? Like that was the thing they were aiming for. For me, I think they needed to aim for equal exposure first, because the football we're not going to have the same. We're not going to have the same prize money for the men as we do for the women. I think that is ridiculous to consider. But we need equal exposure. I think we need to have the same column inches for women's matches that we do for men's. I think that is more achievable, and I think that's a way off. But on a normal day at Wimbledon, so the first, certainly the first week, any Grand Slam, you'll have 3 matches on a show court. There'll be 2 men's matches and 1 women's match every day. And I always said we need to get to a point where, all the years I used to go to Wimbledon and fall out of my tent sometimes, every time we need to have 2 women's matches and a men's match sometimes. Because the message you're sending there is the bigger value is the men's game. And yes, some people say they only want to watch the men's game, and some people only want to watch men's football. But if we don't put it out there, how are people going to see it? How are people going to know they want it? If people have to search for it, some people won't bother. We've got a situation at the moment where we've got the Premier League back on, and there's matches all over the place. I said to Mark tonight, I don't know where these games are, so I'm just flicking through channels. But it's harder for me to keep up at the moment because it's all out of sync, and there's so many different channels going on. So I think I've just gone on a rant there. But equal exposure for me is more realistic than the prize money and anything else. And so, if the BBC want to have 5 men's reports, let's have 5 women's reports. Fiona, what do you expect? Do you want the Premier League to take over the women's game? Because I know Nat goes on about this, and I've said yes, please. But as somebody who's watched the women's game for a long time and is invested in it, do you want it to go down that road?
I don't know if I necessarily want the Premier League to take over.
Okay.
But I do think somebody needs to take it from the FA, because at the moment, as long as it's under FA's control, it's going to be all about the national team. We need to progress the Lionesses within the WSL challenge them there. So then they come and play for England, they'll do great. And kind of they advertise those they advertise a game because, oh, come and watch, I don't know, Arsenal versus Chelsea, because you will come and see these lionesses, rather than look at all of these great players, regardless of what country they play for. They're just great. Come and watch them and look at this rivalry. Yeah, I don't know if I'd want the Premier League to do it. Although if the Premier League did have it, maybe they could help with preventing clashes. But maybe it'll be two different arms of the Premier League, so they might not talk to each other. You'd still get those clashes. Yeah, I think somebody else needs to take over it and progress it. Just look at what happened today on Instagram. Who were the FAWSL saying was in the photo? They got the player wrong. They're not
Yeah.
even like what? They're not even both. They were completely different. They both played for Reading, and that's about it. So
I don't know the game, and I knew that was wrong. And you've
yeah.
been watching this game for years, so that must really frustrate you. It needs to be taken seriously, and that's kind of what I'm saying about the exposure. Let's have journalists, let's have people covering the game that are specific to the women's game, not just, we need to cover a story. You go and do that.
Or you're good at social media. You can now run our social media. You also need to be. You're good at running social media, but you know about the game. Imagine if United had put a picture of Greenwood up and said it was Rashford. Do you think that would pass? They'd absolutely torn to shreds. If there was twins and you'd maybe pick the wrong one, you could get away with it.
If there was a slight similarity, you could almost go, okay, I can maybe not really tolerate that. But two completely different people.
Yeah, it's not, and even like if they had the same first name or something along those lines, they'd pick the wrong Instagram handle, but no, they'd gone completely different.
At
I
least
think
it's the right team. Maybe we should be grateful for that.
yeah, I think even if we do get more exposure, there will still be certain things that won't happen. For example, I imagine Manchester United are very happy to not give out how long a contract is for. I bet if they could, they would do it for the men. I think there's still certain things where the club, like, oh, I can do it because nobody's going to challenge it. Whereas the men, if we didn't say how long Pogba had signed a contract for when he signed, or at least it was like, there's rumours, you'd have just all of Manchester United's Twitter feed would be, how long have you signed him for? Those kind of things. And you won't get that with the women's game. So yeah.
I'm going to ask a question that's just come to mind. Okay. And Ian, I'm holding this, I'm throwing it only to Fiona. Okay. Because Fiona and I've talked to Fiona about how long she's been watching the game. Do you feel let down by the media in this country for not giving women's football its due respect?
So it's kind of yes and no. So until there's bigger attendances, why would they take it seriously? If the WSL's average is 1 or 2,000, would you expect men's clubs with 1 or 2,000 in attendance normally to be getting the amount of coverage that WSL gets? But there's also certain things like, I'm pretty sure the BBC have said the wrong person in a photo before, and those kind of things where, as a journalist, it shouldn't be that difficult for you to check, put their name into Google. You should get a range of photos. You pick the person that's in all of them, not just the one person's photo. And then you've got things like the 11 million people watch the Lionesses in the World Cup. So what are you doing to make sure, like, if I was ITV and I had 11 million people watching my program, I'd be like, well, I need to do more of this.
Right. Yeah. I know. Was it Jake who said that the BBC really need to step it up? and they need to show more, because one game and also one game behind the red button isn't enough. Torrens, come back to the point I made about journalists, specific women's football journalists. And I know from talking with Rich last week, he's aware of how many people are interested in the game and trying to cover it. Mark brings a point, though. We know that there are people who aren't interested in growing the game. They want to keep the attendances low, and they call themselves fans of the game. And this is a battle we, I think, as the Barmy Army have, because we want big crowds. We want the girls earning megas. But there are some people who are so invested in the game, long-term fans like yourself, Fiona, and Ian, to a point, that and don't want growth because you like to keep it small and get your selfies, kind of thing. Fiona, go on. I know you. I cut you off there.
We don't even need to aim for the big stadiums, fill it out. We just need to aim for all WSL clubs getting an average above 1,000, maybe 5,000. Just even if we can see 10,000, because aiming to fill Old Trafford, that's going to be a long-term goal. We need to be more realistic. And what can the BBC do? What can the Guardian do? The Telegraph, but also things like if you look at like ESPN, foreign countries, those kind of things, to just make sure we get 5 or 10,000 people regularly attending a game. Making sure that articles are good enough quality. If you've only got one women's football journalist, get another one in so they challenge each other. You know, I've got this many people read my article this week. Well, I've got this many people. There's no challenge there. Yeah, I'll let you talk.
Ian, before you do, Jake makes the point that he thinks there's too many secrets. We talked about this with contract durations. Changes must be made for it to be taken seriously. And I think this is a conversation we could have from now until the end of time. People talk about poor quality. I assume that's on the pitch. But if everything else is of good standard, more people will get on board. I will, of course, at this point say not everything's good, Jake, because the refs are awful. Sorry, Ian, did you want to come?
No.
And also, Jake makes the point the World Cup wasn't capitalised on. I agree with him, but I also think COVID's not helped that. I think the timing of COVID may have killed any momentum. And I think that was said by somebody high up in the FA, or somebody said it anyway. So, Jake, great point. But maybe it would have been different had we been able to finish the season. Ian, go on, you want to come back?
Do you know what? When it comes to exposure, the whole 3 p.m. Saturday argument,
The blackout.
You know, the blackout. If that got rid of, and the women's game could be played on Saturday at 3 o'clock, live, not behind a red button, not on a payware channel like BT Sport, because it will get, unfortunately, on someone like BT Sport, it won't get the coverage, it won't get the viewers.
You're talking BBC here. You're talking even Channel 4. They've picked up sport for Channel 5.
Yeah. If you could get on terrestrial free-to-air TV, the exposure there, you know, the opportunities to grow the game through TV and people watching it, you know, the FA, I think, gave IMG a contract to sell the TV rights for, I think the BBC's and BT Sports contracts end at the end of the season for their TV rights. So I think one of the first things they did was they sold the FA player, they sold rights to Norway and Scandinavia, which the FA player blocked out certain games in the Norwegian market. I think the Norwegians were saying that we have to actually watch it on the television. Which is
perfectly legal sources. The Norwegians always watch their games on legal sources. Sorry, carry on.
You know, and obviously the FA have now brought in Kieran Taven to do their communications. You know, he knows the women's game extremely well. Look at all the good work he did with the World Cup last summer. That's a brilliant appointment by the FA. Talking of the FA and what Fiona was saying, the FA should be a governing body, not running competitions. Yes, they can have the FA Cup, because that's, you know, the FA Cup is their tournament, should always be their tournament, but they shouldn't be controlling top flight leagues. That's why they got rid of, that's why the Premier League was created. that's why we need someone like the Premier League to take over the women's game, because the FA aren't the people to grow the game at elite level. It's just not their role. You know, the FA are about grassroots and bringing
And the
people
national
up.
team.
Yeah.
And traditionally, my experience of women's football, before I was properly watching it, so it might just be an international here or there, or it might be the FA Cup final, was the national team was the focus. And, you know, Fiona, you talked about 11 million people watching the World Cup. How many of them then turned up at games? But the FA will tell you, we put 70,000, we got 70,000 into Wembley. We did really well. Hey, it's great. It's wonderful. But where does that then go? And for me, yeah, it's a great start. It's wonderful. But we're not getting people through the turnstiles. I know you asked Rich, it was one of the questions we put to Rich, Ian, about the 3 o'clock blackout. And I think he said, why not? And look, we've got a game this Saturday. United are going to be playing at 3 o'clock on a Saturday on TV. It's something I can't get my head round. I looked at it and I thought, 3 o'clock? Seriously? Are you sure it's not 5:30 or it's been? No, 3 o'clock. And I know it's unusual times, but that was always sacrosanct. 3 o'clock on a Saturday. Nobody can watch TV games. But yeah, maybe that is one of the ways to go. Fiona, do you want to come on something?
And it doesn't have to be every week. If the FA went, I don't know, the first Saturday of the month, or every fourth Saturday, every second Saturday, we're going to have a game, and you'll rotate through the club. So, you know, everybody will come on it throughout the season, but you could maybe pick interesting games, you know, relegation battle or, you know, Champions League battle at the end of the season. But you'd have to make sure every club has a chance, because there's no point. Oh, no, it wouldn't make any difference to us because we'd be at the games. But
Yeah.
you know, if you showed Manchester United and Chelsea and Arsenal and Man City, and those are the only games you show, how are anybody going to know that the other clubs exist in the WSL? Because they're only going to know they're on TV. You're going to either make it so interesting that they'll want to do more research, find their local club, look up the table, or you have to make it easy for a person. And let's be honest, most people will want it the easy way.
Yeah. And why wouldn't they? And this is one of the issues I know we've talked about so many times as well in the last year or so. The international breaks, they break so much. People, and I can't remember who made this point, that people lose momentum. Have we got a game next week? No, it's international break. Have we got a game next week? No, it's international. Oh, right, well, I can't be bothered. Jake's made the point about the FA player. It's great, but, and again, it's not making the game more accessible because you can't stumble across it. You have to purposely go to it. Ian, was there anything you wanted to say? I know I jumped in on that point.
No, I was going to say, with the FA player, it's a great idea. But unfortunately, as someone who had to watch a couple of games on the FA player, well, I watched only one game on the FA player, and that's the Chelsea game because I was stuck in the office. And I'm going to be honest with you.
In Rome, so we beat you.
But I'll be honest with you. You know, there aren't any replays. There's a single commentator. There's no analyst. There's no multi-angle cameras. It's just a case of, we've just stuck a camera there and someone's going to talk about it. And I'm going to be honest with you, the commentators aren't normally that good. There's only one commentator that I like on the FA player, and he typically turns up on MUTV when we have a game. So, but yeah, the FA player, great idea. But I also think that we all whinge about international breaks, but the women's game also needs to utilise the men's international breaks better.
Spot on. Spot on.
England will only play one game either on I think it is now, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. You like one game on the Thursday, then the Tuesday, Monday, or the Saturday, then the Wednesday. So if the England game is played at 5 o'clock on Saturday evening or 5:30 on the Saturday evening, get a couple of women's games on in front of that. You know, do a 12 o'clock kickoff on BBC One, a 3 o'clock kickoff on BBC One, and then ITV can show the men's the men's England game at 5:30. You've got a whole afternoon of football there, and you're showcasing 2 women's games at the same time. But going back to the column inches, the BBC will have a write-up on the game they show.
Yes.
Then you will then see the other games that the other games have gone on, and they'll get a paragraph. They will sum up all the other games in a paragraph with each game saying, it was Spurs Arsenal. They have the whole spiel, and then United beat Birmingham 2-1. Man City came over tough Reading side 2-1, and something like, and that'll be it. That's all you will see from the BBC. There's, as you said, column inches is good for the game they're showing. Everything else, it's non-existent. Apart from, obviously, the Reading game, for we all know what reason.
And again, though, for me, that's a negative, because if that's the
only
reason
why, the only reason that got column inches is because it was a
it was
bad referee decision.
And
that's
that
the only reason it got the videos on the front page. Some of the ex-referees like Keith Hackett and Mark Halsey were saying how bad it was. It only got column inches is because of how bad it was. And I'm also going to be honest with you, I don't think anybody would have picked that up if it hadn't been it being a Man United game. Because if that had just been Bristol City Brighton, nobody would have been. I'm not going to be saying this. Nobody would have been watching it, or hardly anybody been watching it.
Ian, I agree with you, and I just think that's
the sad thing.
But that's the strange world we live in, whereby United bring that kind of focus.
Yeah.
And maybe it's needed United to come in now to push the women's game that little bit more. I'm not saying it's because of United, they're the team and they're the great God, but maybe the timing just made that bit of sense. And maybe with United coming in, it just made, and with the world the way it was a couple of years ago, it's just made people look at it a bit differently. I thought it was ridiculous that up until Barclays sponsored it, whoever won the Super League didn't get any prize money. I thought that was ridiculous. I just
look at the I just look at the prize money. Every year when we have the FA Cup, Lewis come out with their perfectly understandable, because obviously they're all for the equality. The women's game in the you go the WSL teams come in at the 4th round. The 4th round winners get, I don't know what it is, but they say they get £1,200 as a prize money compared to say £50,000-60,000 in the I don't know how much it is in the men's game. But they're right saying that money doesn't even pay if they have to travel up to Durham. That means that prize money has been wiped out by the coach and the hotels they've had to pay for that game. They lose money playing that game.
Ipswich, when they played City, Ipswich played City in the FA Cup, didn't they? Yeah.
Yes.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but whatever prize money they had up until that date didn't pay for the coach. Look, Ian, do you remember last year we were having a conversation around a certain team not wanting to qualify from their Conti Cup group because they didn't?
Yes, I do remember that conversation very well. Yes.
We've weirdly, Torrens just mentioned about in Norway, they have to pay. We get the FA Play for free. So, I think the FA Play is great if you cannot get to a game, not if you choose not to go to a game. If there are people who genuinely cannot physically get there, Ian, you were in work, Mark and I were on holiday, then it's great. Otherwise, get your backside to a game. And if after all of this, it doesn't make you think, I'm never going to complain about a cold Wednesday night, wherever it is. And if the toilets at LSV are really questionable, I don't care. Okay?
I still complain about the cold.
I was going to say, I'll still complain, Fiona. Remind me. I will still complain. They're awful. But honestly, right now...
If you think of the amount of miles that we've all done following this team over the last season and a half, I just did a thing for the first season of how many miles I travelled. Yeah. And, I think it was like 85,000 miles that I did in that first season. And I will do it again. Okay, at the moment, I'm not going to be travelling as much. But when we get back to normality, I will be front and centre. Well, not front and centre, but right at the back at the NSP with everybody else.
Back in middle, yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely.
I just love it.
Jake's saying about they're improving slowly. Fan bases are also part of the issue. We need stronger fan bases, and the players deserve it. I've always said that, but we started on contracts, and we've ended up with quality and inequality, I should say, in the men's and women's game. So I like to think we've kind of dragged something out tonight. And some good news for Manchester United. Leicester have lost, so I think that helps the men, doesn't it, for whatever the situation is.
Need Chelsea to lose a bit.
Sorry?
Need Chelsea to lose as well.
Yeah, we need David Moyes to help out, and I really wouldn't be relying on.
No chance.
No, not at all. But isn't it nice that the men have come off a nice, comfortable win last night, and we can bask in that for a little bit longer. That's always a joy, and obviously in these days of no football for the women, it's great. Fiona, I'm just going to I'll tie this up because we have managed to get over the magic hour. I've kind of said, don't ever let me complain about a cold Wednesday night in Lee in the toilets, even though I will. Is there one thing more than anything right now you are looking forward to when football gets back? And I'm thinking in particular when we're able to go to football, because for me, yes, football's on, but it's not back properly. So I'm sticking you on the spot a little, and I'm gonna give you a moment to think. Something I'm really looking forward to is, do you know what it is? It's just that moment of collective singing something. That first song, that first chant will be the best chant ever. And I'll probably get the words wrong because I'll mix up my men's and women's team songs and I'll get them all confused. But
swear word will come out.
I hope I don't swear. And if it isn't until December that we get back into grounds, then may the first song I sing be the 12 Days of Cantona. Fiona, one thing you're really looking forward to. Jake agrees with me. Cold Wednesday night, they're the best.
When we're all singing and the players are coming in, going back in from their warm-ups, and they all clap us, and we just sing for each of them because they all do it very slowly, and then obviously all singing when they come back out for the match, and that roar of just us.
Yes. And you know it'll be extra loud. That first time.
That first game back is going to be loud.
5 minutes into the game, we're not going to be able to speak from sore throats.
Do you remember, Ian, I'll come to you in a second. Do you remember before the City game when Nat got herself a little bit excited? She got herself so excited she was a little bit unwell. I suspect when we first get back to a game, she might not be the only one like that. I'm not saying I will, but I suspect there will be some people who are just so giddy and so excited. Ian, one thing you're really looking forward to when we get back to football?
It's hard to now down one thing because it's everything. It's being back together as a group of fans. I know you managed to catch up with a few of the others. Obviously Manchester, with obviously myself and Stacey and who else is down here? Anthony down here. Yeah. Obviously, we're all the way down here, so it's getting that back together would be great. Nat coming over and shaking you to bits. Sing louder.
That wait outside before we can go in.
Getting smacked in the face with a scarf as she's swinging it around the top of her head. It's things like that you don't realise how important they are to you until they've gone.
You're not looking forward to doing BA Twitter, Ian?
Of course I am. I remember the first night I went to Mark saying, do you think I should do like a live text thing, which was that Conti Cup game against Everton? That cold Wednesday night in Stockport.
No. It was a Thursday night. I'm going to correct you on that one. It was a Thursday night, and it's the best night. It's the best away. Some people say the Arsenal game. Jake will come along in a minute and agree with me. But yeah.
No, that wasn't brilliant. When I started doing that, and obviously I know I share it with Shane now, and that's good.
Ian, you were doing it before then. Yes. I'm going to give you credit on this one, Ian. But I remember at half-time in Durham, you said to me something about, can I say, Mark's agreeing with me. You said something to me about, can I say they've not been up to their usual standards or they're not at the races yet? And I said, yeah, I think that's fair. It's not harsh. So, no, Ian, you've been doing it for longer. Here we go. Jake's first words.
If that happens, I will give him 20 quid.
Oh, I don't know what to say. Let it be soon. Let it be soon. Yeah. Sorry, Ian. Was there anything you wanted to add? I was just making a point that
you know, it's just the thing is, I just can't wait to get back together as a group. Because you know, it's not the same. You know, I know we have the Sunday socials and we do these every week, but until we're all back together at a game, it's not the same. So just getting back together as a group, you know, if the girls do play behind closed doors, it would not surprise me if, you know, performances aren't as good, because they have said that we do spur them on.
Absolutely.
So if they did have to start the season in September behind closed doors, it would be so interesting to watch. Obviously, we'll all be watching the game.
Yeah.
However it's shown, MUTV, FA Player, or whatever it is. I know we'll all be watching and all be supporting them. But it will be that first game back that we're all there, that we're allowed to be there. It'd be so interesting to see the difference in play. And I'm telling you now that we probably are the 12, you know, there's not many supporters that are as loud as us and get behind the teams as us. You know, Casey said it, the players have said it. You know, if they're saying it,
there's a reason why.
There's a reason why they're saying it. They wouldn't be saying it otherwise. So, you know, even Mary was surprised when she joined. She didn't realise what it was like.
And we've not been able to go behind her goal sometimes. So if she's hearing it, then definitely we've made the right impression. I could carry on for hours with you, but I'm quite sure you've all got better things to do. But this is a snapshot of the kind of conversations we have on the social on a Sunday. So if anybody is interested in this kind of conversation, wants to join us on a Sunday, then please do get on our Twitter and we can send you the link. Jake, he's holding you to that £20, Ian. So you're done. Jake, I'm going to make this now. Next week, you're on this next week. I don't know what the topic is, but we need Jake on here next week. Fiona, Ian, thank you so much for joining me as we've muddled our way through from contracts to Ian giving Jake £20. Let's hold it at
James has got to score a hat-trick on the first game back for that, so I feel
No. It wasn't first. It was just James going to score a hat-trick.
Yeah, I still think that's a safe £20.
Yeah, I mean, it is, but I'm just trying to wind Ian up now because I don't think Ian likes to part with the thought of Ian parting with £20 isn't. I think it might cause him a bit of
frugal spender. I am frugal spender. Unless it's
on holiday. Well, we're saving this at the moment, I suppose. We're not paying for football, so Fiona, Ian,
thank you. Money I'm saving.
Really enjoyed the chat. Thank you very much. I'm sure you'll both be back on again soon. I have no idea what next week holds because we're just making this up as we go along, in case you hadn't noticed. Next week will be podcast number 16, hopefully. So we'll hit Lauren James's number. If anybody is going out this weekend, if anybody is enjoying the latest restrictions being lifted, please keep safe. Please look after yourselves. We will be here, some of us at some stage next week. Until then, thank you all for watching and take care, and we'll see you soon. Thanks. Bye-bye.